give people a step-by-step approach to reading scientific journal articles from the beginning to the end and getting the most out of the information presented in that article. A scientific journal article is usually divided into a few main sections. First, you'll notice an abstract, which is about a paragraph long. Then you'll notice an introduction, a few paragraphs long, methods section, a results section, as well as a discussion and a conclusion section. Oftentimes, people will start to read from the beginning to the end, and that may not be the most effective or useful way to get information from a paper. The abstract is an overview of the entire article. It gives a brief introduction, a main goal or hypothesis for the study, as well as some results and a final conclusion as to why the study is important. When reading the abstract, here's one approach that you can take. Circle words that you're unfamiliar with. As you circle each word, use the internet to look for what those words mean. This will help you to understand this brief overview in context. When you are finished with reading an abstract, you may not understand everything, but at least understanding what each word means in context will help you to be a little bit more familiar with the study, as well as excited to learn more. Now here's a task. After reading your abstract, without looking, write 2 to 3 sentences on what you expect to find in this article. This will include information that you've learned from the abstract as to what the authors plan to study and what they found. The next section of the paper is usually the introduction section or the background section. The background section or introduction provides a historical overview of why the study is important, as well as bring to light some of the information that is current when it comes to why the study was necessary. The background is a wonderful place for readers to understand the context of a study. When reading the background of a paper, it is important not to skip over words that are unfamiliar. Pause to look up the definition so that you can understand what you're reading. If you skip over keywords in the background or introduction section of the paper, you may not be able to understand fully what the rest of the paper is talking about. Here's your task for the introduction. Without looking at the introduction, write 2 to 3 sentences of what the main goal for the study is and what's the reason for why this study is being conducted. The next section is the methods section. This section may be separate or sometimes paired with the results section, but I'll talk about it separate for now. The methods section is the part of a scientific paper that helps the reader to understand the steps taken in order to obtain the data that will be presented in the paper. In the methods section, usually it's very detailed and you may or may not be familiar with the actual methods used. But what is important for you to understand is why the method is being used to answer the questions presented in the introduction of the paper. So your task for the methods section is write down the main methods of the study and what questions the author plans to use them to answer. The next section of the paper is the results section. In this portion of the paper, the author explains the data that was obtained. There's little to no explanation as to what the data really means. That's for the discussion section, which we'll talk about later. In the results section, the information is usually paired with what's known as figures. Figures are graphical or pictorial depictions of what the data was that the authors discovered in their study. Usually figures are numbered as figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, and a lot of times each figure will have subregions, figure 1A, figure 1B, figure 1C. An approach to read the results section is to read figure by figure and write what the main finding of that figure was. Here's your task for the results section. What are 3 to 4 major discoveries that were discussed in the results section of this paper. The next section of the paper is known as the discussion section. Sometimes also includes a conclusion at the very end. The discussion is where the authors take time to explain what the significance of their results mean. Remember, in the results section, it was just an explanation of the actual data. But in the discussion section, this is an explanation of why the data is important, what it means in this study as well as in the broader context of the scientific field. The authors for the paper that you are reading are experts in their field, and they will tell you what their conclusions were for this study. However, feel free to draw your own conclusions. Here's your task for the discussion and conclusion section of the paper. Write down what you think was the most impactful finding in this study. Also, how do you think this study impacted the scientific community as well as the world? Going through each of the tasks presented in this video will hopefully give you a nice outline of the study that you're reading after you've understood each section of the paper. Now, if you go to the abstract and read it one more time, it should be very clear and easy to understand the overall goal, purpose, findings, and outcome of the study. Hopefully this video helps.